people are saying that the United States is ever more divided, blah, blah, blah. How do you see this country, Douglas?
Well, it's obviously divided, wildly divided, and you can't, unless you spend long periods of time here, you can't know just how bad it is. One thing I would make observation on that is, in the time I've been coming here myself, I've noticed that people used to talk about people who had the means to move around, which is, of course, not everybody. People who have the means to move around used to talk about moving abroad. If things go south in America, we'll go to New Zealand. Or Malta. Or whatever. It was a sort of dinner party conversation, if you like.
Canada was the other one.
Canada, yeah. Remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, none of these places have made themselves remotely appealing in the time since. But I do notice that has disappeared pretty much as a subject of conversation, partly because of the way in which countries like Australia, New Zealand and Canada dealt with lockdown and COVID and showed extraordinary authoritarian tendencies which most people hadn't expected. But it's also gone away because what's happening in America is people are moving within the country. A lot of my friends from California have been moving to Texas, particularly Austin. My friends in New York have mainly left when I came here. And they've moved to, Houston and Miami, and some of the wealthy ones moved to Palm Beach, or they've to West Palm Beach and Florida in general. And some people see this as a terrible sign, an example of the further fracturing of the society. You can see it that way, but you can also see it as an expression of trust, nevertheless, in the United States of America. Or to put it another way, the recognition that if America goes south, you don't buy yourself any time in Malta. If America goes south, you don't actually buy yourself any time in one of the countries that was effectively protected as a satellite part of the American era of dominance. So I think there's a sort of recognition now of that. If you don't save it here, it's not saved anywhere. So you better make sure it works here. And there are people from the crazy extremes of the left and the right in America, most recently on the right from the lunatic Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a sort of gift that keeps on giving for the Democrats, who called for a split up of the country. It's mad talk and frivolous talk, really. But it matters enormously that people in America should be able to get along, and if they can't, there are many other problems that come from that. But I think that, and I've said a lot whilst I've been here, that people say sort of what one thing can you do to fix the growing divide, and I always say just agree on one thing, the one thing that happened, like agree when you were founded, or agree on the inviolability of the Constitution, or just agree on the fact the founding fathers were great men, or whatever you want. Just like agree that it was a good thing that Abraham Lincoln was born. Whatever you want. Just like, or agree who won the last election. That's a tougher one. Just that would really help in America, because the problem, as I said quite often, is that the problem is in America in particular is not that people have different opinions, but they have different facts. And you find very fast in any interaction in public or private which facts the person you're speaking to has got. And the moment you get into one of the ones they've got, which is one that you regard as not being true, you just get gnarled up. And you very rarely can get anywhere after that. And you either have to park it, say, okay, let's just not do that now, or you have to go all in and, kind of ruin the evening. I'm a sort of past master at that.
You know what? When you're talking about agreeing on something, all the things you listed are important, but I sort of feel it almost goes deeper than that, which is, first and foremost, Americans and the West, people in the Western countries generally, have to agree that we want the West to survive and we want it to prosper.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of people now who don't agree on that. And I'm not just talking about the crazies on the left, although that is primarily coming from them, but your point about, people saying we need a national divorce, all of that. I mean, part of that is an idea as you say, is crazy talk, that would make sure that America doesn't survive and doesn't prosper.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that everyone can only see the world from the position they're standing in, you know, and there's a limited extent to which you can say to people, you have no idea how good you've got it. I mean, you've both spoken about this before, and we've spoken about it. You can sort of tell people it's sort of hell over there, or it's hell there before, but people are just living in the lives they've found themselves in, and if things aren't always going their way, they will quite often reach for a grandiose, overarching explanation for it. I mean, the oddity, of course, is that they tend to reach back for explanations that have failed every time they've been tried. You know, like I remember after the financial crisis in 2008, there was this glut of pieces by ignoramuses saying things like, should we think about trying socialism? Well, it's like, should we look at eating cyanide? It's sort of, but that's only because these are ignorant people who think that there's a sort of binary.
That's right.
Which is like capitalism when it's gone wrong, like it did in 2008, and the only other alternative to capitalism is state-run communism. So I don't have much time for those people, and well, maybe we should sort of just ignore them. You know, they just don't know what they're talking about. I mean, you can't open your mouth and be that stupid. I think you should.
But this is what I'm getting at, though, is I think more broadly in society, the very idea. You know, how often do you hear on TV or in the paper someone saying what you and I have both said often, which is the West is great and we want it to survive and thrive. But that isn't something that people say. And I feel like quite a lot of people don't actually have that concept in mind because they're so busy on the internal fight, they don't recognize that there are external fights in which we are weakening ourselves by fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, I think it's partly, it goes back to the point I was making about the modus vivendi. People don't necessarily understand the settlement that they're living in. And that this might all be part of it, or at least this is the only system that allows for that. You know, I mean, free market capitalism is the only system anyone ever invented that makes even its critics rich. You know, as Mr. Chomsky and others have found out. Michael Moore is another good example. But I think a lot of people don't understand the mode in which the society is set that allows for the self-criticism, that allows for the self-flagellation, that allows for the endless criticisms and critiques. And my view is that that's all actually a feature of our society which is good. The self-criticism is a definite benefit in Western societies. It's good until it turns into self-laceration, self-loathing, and then self-destruction. And it's not hard to see where those degradations occur. But I think that, yes, a lot of people don't understand the setting they're in, or I mean, they're sort of like the fish in water thing, you know. They don't realize that that's the water. And the alternatives are all just being flung out into dry, parched land. But maybe this stuff only comes up because of sort of frustrations that people are feeling, and they grab for whatever there is that they think is the only other alternatives. And unfortunately, everything nearby that they grab is so much worse, as we all know.